Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome back to the AFVRC for what is the start of the second half of the season here tonight. That's right, round 6 is getting underway. Once again, back to those sprint formats. And we shall be getting underway soon at what was the mystery track that was decided last week of the Circuit de Navarra. My name is Max Ring, and joining me tonight is who joined me in Thruxton. It's John Harris. How are you, John, on this Wednesday evening?
Doing well. Looking forward to this race. Difficult track for them out there. Lots of sort of fast-flowing corners, and we've seen a lot of spins in practice. So this one is going to be one to grab your popcorn and sit back and watch, as they say.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. It's going to be a very tricky track, especially in that mid part of the circuit from what we've seen, John, in the practice so far, is that a lot of drivers, especially through the likes of around about that turn 8 to turn 9 point, they're having a few tricky moments getting the foot down, and they're looping themselves round and hitting into the wall. So it's going to be difficult, but we will now have a look at the drivers' standings just before we head into qualifying. And in the pros, it is Jack Goring still on top in front of Tom Stevens. We got a new man in second place, but there is still a hefty 190 point difference between Jack Goring and Tom Stevens. Then it's Ben Cullen in third, Chris Pauley in fourth, David Wrench after his non-appearance last week dropped down to fifth. Then it's Chris Boland, Ethan Lee, Will Fulks, who has dominated every race he's been in, unfortunately because he's missed 2 rounds, is down in eighth. There's Pete Plastow and Adam Barron rounding out that top 10. Then we've got Toby Andrews, Scott Darville, Knight, Trunwit, Berris, Forrest, Cross, Crop, Blackwell and Murphy rounding out the rest of the top 20, followed by 21st being Chambers, 22nd being Slater, and rounding out your point scorers, it's Stuart Eatock and John Finch, who has, I don't think, participated so far this season in 24th. Now onto the amateur standings after last week's domination with getting the record of a lap ahead of the rest of the field in his class. Scott Eastwood is at the head of the amateur field, followed by Ben Weston, Mark Gladwell, who rounds up the top 3. Then Josh Lindsay, who finished last week on the podium, even though he was on his lid for some of the session. Then it's Craig the Jew in 5th, Glenberry in 6th, Bailey Vernon Higgs, Worley, Gray and Scott rounding out the top 10. And for the rest of the amateur standings, we have Tom Bunton, Adam Warmington and Neil Jack rounding out those point scorers once again, with Robert Cross and Tim Hastings yet to participate. But John, of course, it's still Goring and Eastwood at the top of their respective divisions, and I think it all boils down to here the consistency they've shown all season long. They've always been there and thereabouts the race victory and the podiums. The only real contenders, at least to Goring, is Fulks, but luckily for him, Fulks hasn't been here enough.
Yeah, I mean, at the first race of the season, I remember Will Fulks saying, I'll be here every single round. Sadly, it hasn't transpired for him, having to miss 2 rounds, so that really does give Jack Goring a little bit of reprieve in terms of pressure. But you know, the points do accumulate, and if Will Fulks carries on like this, it could end up very close at the end of the season anyway. So the pressure is on Will Fulks to basically score perfectly every single round, effectively. Jack Goring can maybe take a 3rd or 4th place. He's definitely got the pace for it every single track so far. So it's an interesting one, and in the amateur category, well, I mean, it's pretty close anyway. So a lot of that will come down to just having clean races and not getting caught up in battles, for example, with other classes. The pro class, Craig Ledoux, for example, very good pace, but trying to fight the faster category, you're losing points.
Exactly, and for Ledoux, as Fulks sets the benchmark so far in this session with a 38.3, he was our 2nd driver across the line on a valid lap. And yeah, it really all boils down to, especially for Ledoux, who qualified on the front row in the AM category last time out in Spa. He got involved in that lap 1 instant, bogged down off the start, and then unfortunately for him, it just all went wrong before we even made it to the first corner. And it's when you're a bit inconsistent, when those collisions happen with other cars, that's where points do slowly start to fall, because the Jew has certainly had the pace this season to be one of those front runners, to be the one contending in the AM standings. As you can see, he is in that P5 spot. He's a few points off Josh Lindsay, but he is just under 200 points behind Scott Eastwood at this stage. And you would think, if you looked at them from their own personal driving and who's the quicker driver, you would think that the Jew would be the one ahead. But it just shows that consistency of Eastwood and how he did last week as well, with being a lap clear of the rest while everybody else was being caught in their own accidents. And of course, as we mentioned, the Jew at turn 1 and everyone else, even with cars flipping over, he was able to keep it clean, come out on top, and that's what's given him that advantage.
Indeed, and I think driver experience counts a lot for that, to be fair. Craig may have made a mistake last round, or put himself under pressure with a bad start, let's say, but it's a mistake that normally you don't make twice, and so it'll be interesting to see whether that happens again, whether there's any sort of maybe just tiptoedness, as I say, in just being cautious and timid off of the start. Normally, when you make a mistake like that, you want to go all guns blazing into the next race start at turn 1. So it's a very tricky turn 1 and turn 2 complex here as well. So drivers will have a lot to contend with on the start of the lap. You're just actually seeing the start of the lap here from Scott Darville. So turn 1 there, very shallow turn 1, but then into turn 2 is effectively a hairpin. So you've got to be really, really careful. And I think a lot of drivers today will be looking at that and thinking, even if I qualify well, I will have to just be very cautious and leave room. And so that is a lot of mental charge for all of the drivers today.
Oh, certainly is, as Colin Scott goes off the road there at the second corner, or actually turn 3, should I say, as is a double apexed right-hander. It's turn 2, then into 3, but he is our first victim. As you can see, if you carry just a little bit too much speed into that complex, the rear of the car steps out on you. Of course, not a lot of downforce on these Porsche Cup cars, and that's something that can easily happen. We've seen that around other parts of the circuit as well in the practice session just before this, but that's another thing they need to look out for too here, John, is that race start, is the fact that, of course, through turn 1s and 2, it's kind of wide, it narrows through 2, and then once you get to 3, you'll come into pretty much a complete stop. It turns into a hairpin, and it becomes quite narrow as well, even on the exit of the corner. So you could be 3 wide at one point, and then you have to go to, say, 2 wide because it narrows up so much. So it's going to be all about who gets the best launch, as Fulks goes even faster now with a 37.6. He's now 1.1 seconds ahead of Jack Goring in second. But that race start could see plenty of drivers get taken out on that opening tour just by how much they all just congest into one another.
Yes, this is a track I like to call a switchback shenanigans track, because there's a lot of tight twisty corners, a lot of closing apexes, and that means that you can take different lines into it. There's a lot of turns that interlink into others, and you've got that long back straight between turn 8 and turn 9 that you can see on the track map, the shorter of the 2 straights, which is prime overtaking corner if you can get the braking done or get a good exit. You can see they're very tight corners at the end of the straight, but also the main straight as well. So you've got a lot of different possibilities to sort of plan your race and get some overtakes done, but it will be the case of just holding on to your tires around here as well. So if you're battling with people, you could find yourself in trouble at the end of the race. 2 sprint races today, so 20 minutes each, which means that tires shouldn't be that much of a problem, but we have seen in the closing sort of, say, 5 minutes of the races that some people's tires have been falling off in terms of overheating. So it'll be interesting to see. At the moment, Will Fulks leads with Jack Goring in P2 and Chris Bull in P3 in the Pro category. Meanwhile, Glenn Berry just in P1 with a 39.2, a very good lap, to be fair, for the amateur category. Craig Ledur again demonstrating the great pace, and Mark Gladwell at the moment in P3. Scott Eastwood down in P5, a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise there for the AM Championship leader. Eastwood down in 5th. Matthew Forrest goes up to 3rd in the Pro category. On board now of the Jew as he makes his way through the final corner of turn 15 and makes his way up to that start-finish line. Are we going to see an improvement here from the number 13? Seems like he is tracking for a minor improvement for now. Across the line, no, just a few hundredths shy of his personal best. But that's also an issue. You mentioned those tyres overheat, and that's also an issue here in qualifying, because Of course, you're pushing that little bit more aggressively in this session compared to the race. And of course, you're really scrubbing those tyres, especially through the likes of turn 5, which is that fast, long left-hander. And it's a very hot day as well, it seems. Of course, you've got the sun beaming down on the circuit. We are in sunny Spain, so it adds to that extra challenging qualifying. As what do? Do you back off? Do you do a push-call push, or do you do a push-call push? How many call laps do you do? How many laps do you push consecutively? It's very difficult to judge. And on a circuit as tricky as this, where tyre overheating can play a big part to understeer and oversteer, it's got to be extremely challenging for drivers to keep those tyres in an optimal window for long enough for more than one lap.
Yeah, you've got the double problem in qualifying with these tyres, I'd say, in that it takes maybe a lap or two for these tyres to come up to temperature in the Porsche Cup car. So you have to just go out there and do a few laps, even with a bit of fuel on board. And then once you start pushing, as you said, because of the tricky turns, it's quite literally one push lap, one cool down lap. So you have to time it right at the end of the session in terms of qualifying to get your best time in. The track will be rubbering up a little bit, so it will improve. And you can see the line actually forming there already on the racing line. So the time should theoretically be getting faster, although nobody improving for the moment. But yeah, it's one of those tricky circuits where, because you're a mid-engined car, and it's quite a short wheelbase in terms of a racing car as well, it's got that double conundrum of you're turning all of the time, so you can overheat one set of tires on the left or the right, but also you're accelerating and braking at the same time. So the propensity to overheat the rears, especially on this track, is so bad, and that's why we're seeing drivers spin out left, right, and centre already in qualifying.
Certainly is indeed. As Scott Eastwood went up to 4th, and Jack Trunwitt did go up to 6th place, but then instantly got displaced by Chris Boland. Now looking at Ben Weston, 5th in the amateur categories. He makes his way to the start-finish line. Is he going to improve on that 41.1? Went a little bit wide out of turn 12 across the line. No, does not find an improvement. Warmington just behind him goes up to 6th fastest. He's on a 41.6 in that AM category. Jack Goring, of course, the man leading the Pro Championship standings, bounces all over the curbs through turn 12, then into quite a tricky braking zone of turn 13. Got to get the car rotated around quite nicely and then straight back onto the power. 14 is somewhat of a small lift as you then just get back onto the throttle, bring it straight back over to the left-hand side into a very tricky off-cambered final corner. And now for Jack Goring, what's it going to be for him as he comes across the line? Can he get closer to Will Fulks at the top? Can he displace Will Fulks at the top? No, he cannot. A 38.5, 3 tenths down on his previous best. By the looks of things, a lot of drivers have already got the best out of their tyres. I say that, Chris Boland goes up to 4th.
Yeah, Chris Boland and Pete Plasto, the only two improving there on their latest lap. So really tricky at the moment. Glenberry still trying to push, with Craig Legier bumping him down to P2 now. So Legier 39.1, which for context would put him just outside of the top 10 in the pro category. So it is actually quite close in terms of those times, and that's good to see, to be fair. What you want to see in the amateur category is drivers over the course of the season improving and potentially beating some of the pro drivers as well. As they gain experience, as they gain confidence versus other drivers, they will gain lap time as well. So it's really good to see. And there you can see the classification order with everyone grouped together. So yeah, very close. And Adam Barrow not having a good time at the moment there in 14th, but down the order in terms of lap time, that's for sure. But you can see by the times as well, it's oh so close. Apart from Will Fulks, who's out in the middle of nowhere at the front, everyone else so close in terms of performance. And there's a spin in the background because that's a lot of smoke.
Yeah, someone must have spun there. That would have been at turn 5. So one of the tricky places is actually someone runs a little bit wide at turn 13. I think I was just getting out of the way. Jack Trunwitt, a little bit of disconnection issues there for Trunwitt, but he's back on the road and we'll see what he can do. But is Trunwitt going to do enough to move up from 8th fastest? Ledoux, Bury and Gladwell all down in 14th, 15th and 16th overall. But got 1, 2, 3, of course, in their class, and that was Jack Trunwick moving himself up to 5th fastest, so he could still find some time in the lap. Tom Stevens, I believe, was the car getting out the way at turn 13, and he just got out the way there once again, heading up into that first corner. So he will just be backing off to go for one more. And Ben Cullen, who's currently 12th fastest in the pro category, 12th overall as well. A 39.1 currently to his name. Is he going to find anything on this lap? No, he will not. So he's going to be gearing up for another attempt as we head to 5 minutes and 38 seconds to go.
Yep, dying laps of the qualifying now. You have to have your tyres in good condition. You have to be thinking now about when to have your final lap. There's a lot of cars on track as well. So getting that track position, getting that clean circuit in front of you is oh so important. Adrian Warmington here on a lap for the current lap, 139.2, the personal best. So it's quite, well, a good pace, but if you can just improve by 0.2 of a second, you're gaining 3 or 4 positions straight away. So that just demonstrates how close it is at the moment. Scott Eastwood has a bit of work to do. Mr. Consistency at the moment, but P4, you don't really want to be starting mid-pack around here. That puts you in the danger zone for that turn 2 and 3 complex. So it'll be interesting to see whether drivers maybe sacrifice qualifying even a little bit to sort of profit from other drivers' mistakes. Craig Ledoux getting out. Craig Ledoux making contact there, just braking on the racing line, and that is just a little bit of an error there in qualifying, costing someone else their quali lap as well. Unfortunate scenes.
Yeah, that was really confusing there to see what happened. It seemed like I believe that was Ethan Lee that went into the back of Craig Ledoux there. Ledoux was giving him enough time to react, and it seemed like Lee just moved over. Apologies if it is not Ethan Lee, but I believe that was his car. And Ledoux had to come back into the pit lane. He's come out onto the road there, as you can see on board with, well, as we look at Chris Pooley, who's behind, of course, Scott Darville. And for Chris Pooley, he currently lies 3rd fastest. He's currently on a 38.3. If he finds a 0.2 of a second, he goes above Jack Goring. But he's got Scott Darville in front, who, even though we'll give him a slight slipstream, is a little bit of a visual distraction, whereas Goring is kind of by himself. No, he's not. He has got, I believe, that is the car of Pete Plasto just in front of him. Onto the brakes he goes, though, into turn 11 before making his way into 12. This nice and tricky left-hander. The car just rotating wide all the time. A small slide as well out of the corner. And as he makes his way on to the brakes through turn 13, of course, Goring, the championship leader. As long as he finishes on these consistent podium scores, he's doing himself well in the championship, but his real rival, if Will Fuchs does appear for the rest of the season, will be that man currently occupying the top spot for the championship. So for Jack Goring, what's it going to be behind Will Fuchs, actually, who he's trying to displace? Is he going to do enough across the line? No, doesn't improve on his own lap time either, but we'll still have time for 2 more runs as Will Fuchs gets underway for his next attempt.
Will Fuchs has just been on another planet in this qualifying session, so let's see exactly where that time is being found. Just very smooth on the rotation, I'd say, into turn 3. You can look at the steering wheel movements as just minimal stuff. You don't really want to be sawing at the wheel on a circuit like this. You want to keep it clean, consistent, maybe even induce a little bit of understeer on the fronts to just keep the rears in check. And you can see there just the car is rotating very clean, using all of the track limits around a circuit like this with the AstroTurf on the outside. It's so easy to extend, but it's very easy to also get a track cut penalty. So we'll have to wait and see whether this is a valid lap, but it's looking like a lap under, well, the full green flag conditions and full push as far as I can see. Just absolutely nailing the traction as well. So the 2 big things I'd say is the neatness of the driving that is making the difference, and just absolutely nailing the exits in terms of track limits and speed all the time. You can see the bouncing there, perfectly calculated, and he's using every meter and a bit more of the road.
Yeah, he certainly is indeed. Will Fuchs is really just using all the road he possibly can, placing that car perfectly and just hitting all his marks. And is this going to be an even faster lap for the number 31, the man that has topped every single competitive session he's been a part of here this season? And across the line he goes, a 37.6 to beat. No, just falls shy by about a 1/10.5, a 37.5. 38.7. Goring, he can't find an improvement himself. Pete Plasto is now on a lap for fastest in the 3-1-2 machine as he now makes his way through the right-hander of that is going to be turn 8 and makes the run down into 9. We've seen a lot of cars go around at 8, not so much in this qualifying session here, John, but I'm expecting in that race it is going to be an overtaking opportunity. It narrows up quite a bit on the exit as well, so potentially opportunities for a little bit of contact out of that right-hander.
Indeed, yes. I will also say that practice, though, is for making those mistakes. If you can make them there and just test the limits of the car and not make it in qualifying, that's exactly what you want to do. So we've seen a lot less mistakes than we have in practice, that's for sure. Pete Plasto on the closing corners of the lap right now. Will it be an improvement? It's kind of pressure plate at the moment to try and get himself onto the provisional top 3 of qualifying. So it's looking a little bit wide in the last turn there over the curb and just going toward the line now to pedal to the metal. Will it be an improvement? 38.5. No, it's not. It's about 500ths of a second off of his personal best. So lap time's very consistent. However, this is a checkered flag of qualifying. So anyone who passes the start-finish lap or a line right now, that's their last lap.
It certainly is indeed. So it is still Fulks who tops the pro standings. Colin Scott there getting into a bit of a squabble with one of the pro cars as he was making his way into turn 13. Of course, needs to beat a 141.8. That is his personal best so far. If he finds 0.2 of a second, he will move off the back of the AM category. He will go in front of Adrian Warmington, who is currently 6th fast. As he makes his way to the line, no, will fall short as Chris Boland moves himself up into 5th place. That was the car just in front there, actually, of Colin Scott. Ethan Lee comes into the pit lane. Pete Plasto, of course, one of the last drivers to cross the start-finish line. Can he find an improvement this time around? Potentially lost all the time he found through the final corner on that previous tour that he did. Ben Cullen now coming up to the line himself. Currently 10th fastest on a 38.9. Can he move any further up in the top 10? Across the line he goes. No, he will fall short as well. A 38. Actually, no, sorry, he does by a few thousandths of a second. And he will stay in 10th place. Now James King also coming into the pit lane. Pete Plasto is still potentially pushing on as he now makes his way to the start-finish line. The 3-1-2. Can he break into the top 3 and beat Chris Pauli across the line? No. Once again, a 38.5. A little bit slower than what he did last time around as Fulks goes into the back there of, I believe, Ben Weston, and he'll come into the pit lane, but it don't matter for once again in qualifying for now his 4th occasion. It is going to be Will Fulks who takes pole position.
Craig Ledoux having a great result there in the amateur category as well. So here are your final standings. Will Fulks takes pole position. As we said, Jack Goring will line up alongside in 2nd place. Chris Pauli will start on row 2 alongside Pete Plasto. So great qualifying from then. Although the 0.5 of a second nearly gap to Will Fulks between everyone else is a bit daunting for the race. We'll have to wait and see if anybody can challenge him. Chris Boland's P5 with Jack Trunwitt alongside Matthew Forrest with James King in P7 and P8. Ethan Lee and Ben Cullen round out the top 10. Tom Stevens in 11th with Scott Darville alongside with Dan Cross and Adam Barron rounding out the pro category. And in the amateur class, we have Craig Ledoux on pole with Glyn Berry in P2. Only a 1/10 of a second separating them and only 3,000ths of a second to Mark Gladwell in P3. Scott Eastwood's not finding the pace at the moment. 0.5 of a second off the pace there in P4 with Ben Weston, P5. A big gap there, so hopefully they can close that down in the race. Adrian Warmington, P6 with Colin Scott, P7.
Very, very interesting grid, and we'll see where the AM drivers also shake up, as here is it on a 2x2 starting format. As you can see here on row number 4. It's Matthew Forrest and James King, then Ethan Lee and Ben Cullen, and then Tom Stevens alongside Scott Darville. Before we head to Dan Cross, and then we see our AM drivers here on row 7 with Craig Ledoux, then it's Glenberry and Mark Gladwell side by side, and then Adam Barron, the last of the pro runners, and then Scott Eastwood rounding out P18. And then it's Western, Warmington and Scott rounding out the 21 car grid for this 20-minute sprint race. Just waiting, I believe, on Jack Goring to line up. Then we should be getting underway. It's Will Fulks on pole position once more. He has not been beaten yet when he has attended. Can today be the difference? Just getting ready for the command now. It's Fulks and Goring on the front row of the grids. And we are racing here in Navarra, and it's a good launch from Chris Pooley, and Jack Goring gets bogged down from that second place spot, just like we saw from the Jew only a week ago. Fulks leads the way into that first corner from Pooley, and then it's Goring who lines up in second. Pete Plasto followed by James King, and it's side by side, nearly 3 wide in the background. Luckily so far, everybody making it through unscathed, and no one it's being tipped round into a spin through the first couple of corners as we make our way down the hill into turn 5 for the first time in this 20-minute sprint race, and it's going to be all the way around the outside here through turn 5 for the likes of Scott Darville, and there's some contact further back, and it's a spin, I believe, for Chris Boland, who has now just gone round, and unfortunately for him, as you know, sorry, Tom Stevens it is, who has gone around after some contact with Scott Darville. He's down to 14th place, and that's what can occur on the opening lap, or especially around the circuit like this, as there's a little bit more contact there between Ben Weston and the car in front. And now Scott Eastwood, he is trying to line up a defence here from, I believe that's Mark Gladwell just behind him, as they're side by side now through the next right-hander. And through, oh no, Scott Eastwood is going to make the move back up into turn 11, followed then instantly by 12. There's a car spinning there on the exit of turn 11. Darville off the road as well. It's Trunwitt who went round at the exit of turn 11. Potentially some contact there for the number 24 machine. He's now down to last, and this is what happened to him. No, just looped it all by himself. Cold tyres, putting the power down too soon. And for Trunwitt, he's now at the back of the field.
Yeah, very unfortunate. 2 unfortunate incidents there for Tom Stevens and Jack Trunwitt. I think Stevens just having a bit of contact in the braking zone, and around you go. And then Jack Trunwitt just, yeah, it's unfortunate. Over the curbs, you just really apply the power, and then you go for a little bit of a spin. So easy to do. I'm sure we'll see more of that. But a great start as well by Pete Plasto, trying to challenge Jack Goring as well. So Jack not having a great start, just missing the start by about 0.2 of a second. So on the long run down to turn 1 and turn 2, that was really devastating, and lucky to not have any contact because of it. But as you can see already on the opening laps, everybody just leaving themselves a little bit of a margin. It's not a circuit that people will practice a lot on. That is Mark Gladwell off. So Mark Gladwell, who's having a good event up until that point, is now really down to the back of the order, last place. So if you want to make a mistake, ideally you don't want to make any at all, but you know, the start of the race is the way to do it. You can at least gain time afterwards. Craig Ledoux down a few positions as well, possibly a little bit of a mistake, but still behind the fields there, with Glenberry leading it there, as I think we're about to see a side-by-side. Glenberry and Tom Stevens, that is, making the recovery as well. So Tom Stevens just trying to get more positions and making the overtake on Glenberry there. Although they're going to fight for it. No. I think that's actually Adrian Warmington actually doing the defense. So Adrian saying, we might not be in the same class, but I am going to defend, and I'm not going to make it easy for you. You are technically in the same car. And oh, that was just late braking, too late on the brakes. Adrian Warmington taken out by Tom. Oh, and there's contact on the rejoin as well. Everybody losing their minds, I think, at the start of this race. And Tom in the pits with damage, I think.
Yeah, that would certainly be some front-end damage there for Tom Stevens. Fulks sets the fastest lap of the race here on lap 2. Ben Weston coming under pressure now from Craig the Jew in 3rd place. Another poor start from the Jew, of course, took pole position in that AM category, and he's now going to look to the inside through turns 1, 2 and 3. And is he going to be brave enough on the brakes, and can he hold it on the brakes as he makes his way into 2 now? And he will just be able to slot in front there of Ben Weston and move himself up into 2nd place in class, and now try and hunt down that 4.3 second lead that Glenberry does have over himself in that AM category. Of course, what we saw there with Warmington and Stevens, of course, you're allowed to defend as Trumwit now makes his way through on Adrian Warmington. As he actually,
Whoa.
there is Warmington sending it straight back up the inside, and that's actually had a little bit of contact with Jack Trunwit, but Trunwit does come out on top in the end, and he's able to hold on to that 13th place in the pro category, and that will be around about 16th place overall. And he'll now try and close up to the likes of Bury, Ledoux and Weston. But of course, these AM drivers, John, don't have to move out the way. They've got every right to defend because, of course, there's still overall positions to play for. And that's why, even though they may be in different categories, you still see those battles occur between the pro and the AM drivers.
Talking about that, Chris Pauly's had a bad exit here, and Jack Goring really just trying to find any way through for P2. Will Fulks has checked out in the lead for the moment, but there's a little bit of bump drafting going on here, and this might just be an attempt to try and catch Will Fulks by any means necessary. Jack Goring setting fastest lap of the race. Oh, Chris Pauly off the track, not getting the braking right, just all over the curbs, and that's not ideal as the ABS will kick in. And that is Jack Goring up to P2. You've got the battle with Pete Plasto and Chris Boland as well. They're joining the mix on this one, so it's a four-way fight essentially for P2, and it is shaping up to be a cracker, as they say. So interesting stuff with you can see the cars actually on this long turn 5 really just stepping out on the rear end. They've got no grip already in the tires, and I think what we're seeing is a lot of drivers misinterpreting what the car in front is doing and trying to shape a move up the inside when they're actually just slowing for a later apex. So it's all about adapting to what the driver in front is doing, but it's so difficult in racing conditions, as that was a huge late break by Pete Plasto. He kind of jammed on the anchors there on the apex, just trying to not hit anyone, and Chris Boland trying to carry the speed nearly went all up the rear end as well. So really tricky start for our drivers, and I think that's just symptomatic of it being a track which they're less familiar with.
Yeah, certainly indeed. I think it's also just the fact that some drivers, they may be a bit more confident through certain corners than others. And of course, that's where you see drivers find time. And then that's where it then ebbs and flows throughout a qualifying session. Because say into the likes of turn 3, you may be more confident into there. And like we saw for Pete Plasto, he may be more confident into turn 9 and can find a way to brake later into that corner. And that's where the time difference really does come into play. Will Fulks has got a 4.5-second lead now over Jack Goring, who just got past on Chris Pauly on the previous tour. And will Pauly be able to get the car stopped into turn 3 this time around? Yes, he does. Doesn't crumble under the pressure of Pete Plasto behind, who of course himself needs to keep some tabs on those rear view mirrors from Chris Boland just behind him. The number 86 looking to try and break into that top 4. And you can see the difference in line as well that Plasto takes here, John. He went wide through turn, he went for a tighter angle through turn 4, wider through 5 to open up 6. And this is potentially where he might go for a lunge now into turn 8, and he certainly does indeed. And I think that is going to be Pete Plasto just in front. Yes, it is. And we look back now to Jack Trunwit as he tries to get the pressure onto Ben Weston.
Chris Pauly's come back, though, got the switchback. So switchback on a switchback has happened. So Chris Pauly's still in P3 there. Pete Plasto dropping back down to P4. But as you could see there, the move starts shaping and starts taking effect 2 corners before, where they start taking different lines. It was a great explanation right there, Max. So yeah, you're quite right. It's just everyone trying to set up an overtake on a circuit where it's quite tricky to use the straight line speed. So it'll be interesting to see also what effects that has on the tires. If you're having to turn a lot more to try and get that switchback, you can only do it a set amount of times before the tires start complaining. And you can see that pace difference at the moment. So Chris Pauly having a great start, but the pace of Jack Goring means that he is checking out in P2 as well. 1.7 seconds the gap. Will Fulks is still eking out the lead, but not to the tune of 1 second like it was before, as Jack Goring sets the fastest lap of the race to emphasise that point. The gap down by a few tenths of a second as well. So probably in the same ballpark, these top 2 at the moment. And apart from that battle for P3, it looks like the gaps are increasing with the rest of the field, as I think dirty air does have quite a bit of an effect on this track. Chris Pauly being basically pushed around at the moment by Pete Plasto and Chris Boland. They all want that podium position.
Yes, they certainly do. And Boland with a bit of a snap out of turn 6. And I think it also just goes to the fact as well, this circuit, there's not really too many heavy braking zones. The only real ones are into the likes of turn 3. You've also got potentially turn 9 as well, and then also turn 13 are really your heavy braking zones. The last corner is, but it's not really an overtaking opportunity just due to the fact of how it cambers up and the hairpin, and it's so difficult to get close enough through 14 as well with that dirty air. So there isn't too many overtaking opportunities, and you've got to really be close enough to try those lunges. They are heavy braking zones, but you're not coming at to them with too much speed either. So you've got to really be on the gearbox of the car in front. Hearing as well that James King, who's dropped to the back of the field, has potentially disconnected. We did see some lag in the qualifying session, so unfortunate to hear that James King has had some Wi-Fi issues. But for Chris Pooley, he's been able to eke out that gap over Plastau over the course of this previous lap by 0.3 of a second. And now we're going to see if he can potentially just hang on to the coattails of Goring, who on the previous tour once again found another 2 attempts on the race leader Fulks. Maybe, just maybe, if he got that start right, we could have certainly had a race on our hands.
Just a note to everybody driving, if you are using Wi-Fi as your connection, you might want to use a cable for iRacing, that's for sure. The internet stability is of paramount importance for this simulator online as well. So yeah, I've made that mistake before, trusting the Wi-Fi. It definitely didn't work out in my case. So if you do see an occasional blip, usually it is an internet connection issue. With the amount of thunderstorms on the radar in the UK at certain points, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something to do with that as well. So Chris Pooley still under attack there from Pete Plasso. It looks like Chris Boland's actually dropped down the pace, so I wonder if that little snap of oversteer has overheated the tyres a little bit. And so it's definitely a confidence track, this one, because there's a lot of open turns, a lot of turns where you just have to trust the curbs a little bit and use all of the track. I will say also Jack Goring may have made a mistake, because he was not going slowly, but he's lost a lot of time on this lap to the tune of 0.5 of a second. So perhaps a little bit of a mishap off camera, and he was definitely not taking the aggressive line. Scott Darville trying to go up the inside of Dan Cross, or more like the other way round for the moment, according to the telemetry there. So it's definitely an interesting one in the pro category at the back, because although you might not be setting the fastest lap times, in the midfield is where the meat of the racing happens, and I always love being in the midfield because it means you're not really fighting for the win, so you can try some different moves, you can try some experimental stuff, and hopefully it isn't shown on broadcast when you do have it go wrong on you. But yeah, it's always very interesting, and they're just well, line astern at the moment fighting, and it does look like Chris Pooley has picked up the pace at the moment. You can see there Jack Goring just ahead, but it's no longer a gap of 2 or 3 seconds, it's a gap of 1.8. So this is an interesting turn of results here, midway through this race, just after the midway point of the race. Are we seeing the tyre conditions come into effect right now?
You took the words right out of my mouth there, John. I was just about to mention, could Jack Goring's tyres slowly be starting to fade away? Did he push too much once he got past Pooley to try and catch up to Fulks, that he's now really overheated those tyres, and he's had to go into a management mode? Because look into that corner there, turn 11, he lost 0.2 of a second to Will Fulks through that corner alone. So he's starting to really have to manage as Plasto goes wide a little bit further on in the background, and that's really released the nerves and released the pressure away from Chris Pooley, who can now potentially just turn his attention onto Jack Goring in front. And is this where Goring now, where Pooley now starts to close in? Was that why he was so slow at the beginning? Was he just managing those tyres, as Fulks now sets the fastest lap of this race, and he goes into the 1:37, so 37.8 from him is now the fastest lap. And over the course of that previous tour, it was 100th of a second difference between Pooley and Goring. But if the tyres keep overheating for Jack Goring, that gap could certainly get larger and larger, and we could see the number 1 car be all over the back of the 108 by the time the next 6 minutes and 20 seconds are up.
What's impressive is they're lapping only a couple of tenths behind their qualifying pace at the moment, so definitely these tires probably not going off in terms of pace, just in terms of drivability. What you'll notice is if you start overheating the fronts, you'll just turn in, and the grip might be there, but the feeling and the force feedback in the tires will, well, as if to emphasize that, Chris Pauly has a huge snap there into, I think that was turn 9, so yeah, really, really tricky right there, and you just got to just keep it on the course as much as possible. But if those rears and all the tires start to overheat, what will happen is you'll trust the grip into the corner, and then you'll start to feel the wheel get super light, and then you'll panic essentially and try and counter steer, and it can make the tires even worse. So you can see in the steering wheel, compared to qualifying, everyone's being so committed to the corners, but so smooth as well. Look at that, one turn in, one bite of the wheel, one on the apex maximum attack, and then just letting go of the tires, letting go of the turning arc to try and smooth out the acceleration as much as possible. You're not seeing any of that sawing at the wheel in this race, and so that's what's difficult between qualifying and the race right now, is mastering those two driving styles. At the moment, Will Fulks demonstrating that he's on top of everything at the moment.
Yeah, certainly is indeed. On that last lap, Jack Goring was a lot quicker than Chris Pauly. So just as I say that he might be able to catch up the #1 car, he had made that mistake of his own. A nice little slide out of turn 8, and that's now put Plasteau all over the back of him once more. 7 tenths separate that pair. In the AM category, Glenn Burry has still got a big, healthy lead over Craig Ledoux, and he's still got Jack Trumwit in between himself and the man second place in the AM category. And for Glenn Burry, he'll be on for a 12th place overall in this one, so it's going very nicely indeed for him. Chris Boland, of course, is 5th place behind Pete Plasteau, has really picked up the pace after that slide earlier on, and then potentially just lost a bit of confidence, has found his feet once again, but not too long left in this race. Only 4 more minutes to go, so if you need to get the overtakes done, you need to do it now. For Chris Pauly, he could be looking himself at his 2nd podium of the season. He's back-to-back podiums, but you can see another thing these drivers need to be careful of as well, as I just saw as we headed through turn 12, is the gravel being kicked up on the track from drivers making mistakes, and it could be sitting on the racing line. All you need to do is hit it wrong, John, and you're seeing yourself sliding all off the road. But for someone like you, who's got a bit more of a rallying background, it wouldn't be too much of an issue.
On tarmac tires may be an issue. I've been on these racing courses with a Porsche Cup car, and I can tell you that in the simulators, like in real life, you just cannot trust the grip if you've got that sort of loose surface on the track. What will happen is it'll just embed itself in the tire because it's so like heated rubber effectively, and it's very, very soft. Plasto having a bit of an attack right now, so saying, hang on a minute, where's the pace gone, Chris Pauly? You need to get a move on here, or I'm going to take that 3rd place off of you. This is kind of the opportunity that you need with 3 minutes to go. It's attack now, or just rest and just ease yourself into that P4 ready for race 2. But I'm sure a podium is worth it to any driver. So Plasto will be thinking, I've only got a set number of opportunities here to attack. Where am I going to choose to do so? And it does look like he's got better turn-in at the moment. So Pauly's acceleration is good, but the turn-in and apex speed is quite bad. So I'm thinking possibly some front tire overheating right there. Look at the steering inputs. Pete Plasto is very confident in those tires, and yeah, just going back to the gravel situation, if you put a wheel in the gravel, normally you have no grip for the next 4 or 5 corners, so very, very tricky. And I think what's happening there is they're putting a wheel across the dirt there, just on the exit of the tarmac, and that is dragging all sorts of rubbish onto the track. If you light up the tires through there, you are going for a spin.
They certainly are indeed, and for Plasto, he's got about 2 more laps to try and get this move done. And for Jack Trumwit, he's just been able to get past on to Glenn Burry for 12th place overall, and he's, of course, gets that 12th place in class. So the top 12 in the field, all of the pro drivers, and then it is 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row for the AM category field. And in that battle for, of course, 3rd place overall, it will be Pauly and Plasto's it's a battle really for their second podium of the season. So for Pete Plasto, he's got 2 more laps to get this one done, but it really is going to be who gets their second take on the podium, who gets the opportunity to go and get that second opportunity to step up on the roster. And on that last lap, Chris Pooley was faster, but for Pete Plasto, if he can get a good run out of the likes of turn 8, you can see how much he opens up the corners when he's behind Chris Pooley to try and get the exits out of him. How brave is he feeling potentially into turn 1 on this next lap?
Well, yeah, what's puzzled me is that the drivers aren't taking those lines, really, that we saw in qualifying. You know, you need to maximise the track limits, you need to maximise the grip over the curbs. Paradoxically, if you place your tyres on the green strips outside the track, you will have more grip, actually, than if you place them on the curbing. So there's an advantage to be seized there, but I don't see many drivers seizing it during the race. And for Pete Plasto, this is detrimental because you actually need to use that overspeed. You need to use the lines like he's using there to just get that grip and open up the line, as you said, Max. So not using it to great effect right now. And I will say also some damage on that front end, which may be inducing a little bit of understeer for Pete Plasto, but that was a much better exit right there. Not enough, though, for the end of the straight, but onto the final lap, it will be still Chris Pooley under pressure, that's for sure.
It certainly will be indeed. So the final lap gets underway now as Warmington and Eastwood races on, and Eastwood is able to get by there, and he's now 1.7 seconds clear. So the leader of the AM category in the championship is now up into 5th place in that category now in this first of 2 sprint races this evening. And it's been a brilliant exit out of turn 3 for Plasto. He's trying to go around the outside of Pooley. He does the up and under through turn 5. Pooley runs wide, and Plasto says, thank you very much, through turn 6. I'll see myself through, but the better run will go to Chris Pooley. Plasto will defend the inside line, you would think. No, he just keeps the car in the middle of the road, and Pooley will have to just try and find another way through it. It's all about the exit now of turn 8 into turn 9. Pooley will have the slipstream, will be getting closer and closer. How brave is he feeling onto the brakes? Not brave enough to get the move done, but goes for a wider swinging line through turn 9 to bring himself into the likes of turn 11 with an opportunity to go late enough on the brakes. But no, once again, just isn't close enough. He isn't confident enough to send a lunge to the inside with his front nose, and it might just be Plasto who's got the move done on the final lap. But no, he runs wide, and this might now give Pooley the opportunity to go around the outside or even try the good old up and under. But has Plasto parked his car perfectly? No, he's not, and they're going to drag race all the way up into turn 14. It's going to come down to the final corner. Fulks will be your overall race winner, and it's Pooley to the inside, but Plasto makes him look silly. He does the up and under, and Pooley might even lose out to Boland here. He went too hot on the brakes. Chris Boland, has he got him at the line? I think he might have just got it. Yes, he has. By the barest of margins, he would take it by 200ths of a second. So from Pooley, from looking at a potential 3rd place at the start of the lap, drops down to 5th at the very end. Great racing between these drivers. It was Pooley too hot on the brakes, got a little bit too eager and maybe a bit too desperate, and in the end it didn't cost him just 1 place here, John, it cost him 2. And at the front of the field as well, Will Fulks dominates another race. He is inevitable, and the immovable force is once again at the top of the standings.
Yeah, Will Fulks having a dominant victory. Also, Glenbury in the amateur class having a really great race as well. Craig Ledur just displaying great performance as well. But Jack Goring just in that P2 doing whatever he needs to do. Scott Eastwood in P5. A little bit of a, I won't call it a disaster class, but losing valuable points, that's for sure. So that will heat up that championship as well. So here are the confirmation of your race results. Will Fulks in 1st place, with Jack Goring 2nd place as well. Those 2 clear of the chasing pack. Pete Plasto takes P3 on the last lap there from Chris Boland, getting it literally at the line. 2100ths of a second, or 21 thousandths actually, of a second to Chris Pooley. So that was, I mean, thankfully we didn't cut to the onboard with Chris Pooley afterwards, because we would have heard words that we can't use in broadcast conditions. He will be very frustrated with that last lap, that's for sure. Matthew Forrest P6, Ben Cullen P7, Ethan Lee and Scott Darville fighting over P8 literally nearly until the line, with Dan Cross in P10. Moving on to P11, that's Adam Barron with Jack Trunwitt having that spin and just trying to come back from that afterwards, but not being able to make much inroads. Tom Stevens having incidents left, right, and centre, sadly, so a race to forget, and James King having that connection issue. Meanwhile, in the amateur standings, it's Glenbury that takes the race victory. Craig Ledieu just trailing all the time in P2, but no pace to be found to get the overtake done. Ben Weston grabs a podium right here in the amateur class, so well done to him, with Mark Gladwell just missing out as well. Scott Eastwood P5, as I previously mentioned, with Adrian Warmington in P6 and Colin Scott P7.
That was a very, very good race, and actually some really good pace as well from Ledieu, who at one stage was 4 seconds back to Bury and was able to bring the gap back down. But of course, sprint race format, let's reverse the potential top 12 of the field. Of course, your finishing order for the top 12 will be reversed, but let's see what number the wheel decides to pick. So let's spin it now, and while it's spinning, John, what number do you think we're going to get?
I am going for 9.
9. I'm going to go... We've had number 6 quite often, so I'm hoping it's not another number 6. So I'm going to go for 10. I think the top 10 will be reversed as we come up. Now it's going to be another number 6, isn't it? Just our luck. It's like it's rigged. It's like it's once. Oh, no, we're actually going to get a respin of
hang on a minute, this is rigged, as they say.
Yeah, we're rigging it ourselves, and it's gonna be the top 9. It's
an upside down 6.
It's an upside down 6 instead. I think we just had that many 6 places. I think so
it's
far
no longer random.
We've had that many. We have got sick of the number 6, so we're gonna have the top 9 now reverse. So I believe that puts Scott Darville on pole position. So for Scott, in a very similar livery to Will, who dominates the season all the time, he's now got an opportunity to have a podium at the very least. And for Will Fulks, we get to see him start in the mid-pack. This is going to be very, very interesting indeed, and it is going to be Scott Darville on pole from Ethan Lee, Ben Cullen, Matthew Forrest in what will be a P4. Chris Pooley with that P5 has actually benefited him slightly because it now means he starts from P5. Chris Boland will then be P6, followed by Pete Plastow 7th, Goring 8th, and Will Fulks in 9th. And it's going to be interesting to see not only how Will Fulks does in traffic, but Jack Goring as well. The lowest we've ever seen them come from, really, is around about that 6th place spot. So for Will, he's got a lot of work on his hands, but how fast he's been so far this season, it's only an extra 3 cars to pass to him, I think he would be thinking.
Quite possibly so, but it does put you firmly into that midfield pack, which we've seen already at turn 2 and turn 3, really like compresses and condenses, so you don't want to be in the meat grinder, as they say. So it'll require a little bit of caution, I think, and then once you're in the free flow race afterwards, you're going to have to make those switchbacks work, because if you get stuck behind someone, even for 2 or 3 laps, that gap can increase to like the 4 or 5 seconds that we saw at some parts of the racing in the previous race. So it'll be interesting, really, really interesting to see what their overtaking skills are like, because having pace is one thing, overtaking and racecraft and just general track knowledge is another thing.
Yeah, certainly is indeed. So, I mean, for Will as well, when it comes to this circuit, what makes things a little bit harder is, as we mentioned in that previous race, it's just how difficult it is to set up an overtake, because of course there isn't many overtaking opportunities, and we saw that with that Pooley-Plastow fight, is the fact that Pooley went wide through 5, and that gave Plastow the opportunity, but then another opportunity didn't occur all the way till turn 13 when he tried that lunge, because of course Plastow went wide. And then you've got to have a lot of faith as well in the corners, because a lot of these corners have the sausage curbs just behind the main curb, so you can launch yourself over that if you go a little bit too hot, or if you turn in a little bit too early, and that can cause an accident. So it just adds that extra little bit of a challenge as well to these drivers that haven't fought so much. And it's gonna be interesting, but we will get some interviews in, of course, and it will be from the man who took third place on that final lap, Pete Plasto. So let's quickly bring him in for a chat before race 2 begins. Hello, Pete. Can you hear us?
Yeah, good evening. I think I can hear you. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. First of all, congratulations on that third place in race 1. Talk us through your race, and especially through that final lap as well.
Yeah, so it was just a case of hanging on to the guys in front of me, really. I had a fight with Jack, I think it was, early on. He managed to get back up the inside of me pretty quickly, though, and then it was a case of sticking with them while they had a little battle, and then see what comes, really. And then the last lap was pretty intense, and yeah, good racing.
Yeah, it certainly was in. Oh, don't carry on, John.
I was going to say, if you could possibly talk us through the process of creating that overtaking opportunity. It's a difficult circuit to create the opportunity. So how do you go through that, and how did you make it work?
Well, it was only his mistake that he made going into the second part of turn 1, if you like. The mistake he made there, and then that gave me a little run on him. It's so hard to get a run out of a corner quicker than the guy in front of you, unless they sort of spin up the rear tyres or something like that, then there's always going to be a struggle. So I can only thank him, really, for a bit of clean racing and making a mistake.
Yeah, but talking about that mistake, was you always expecting him to go deep into 15? That's why you set up the switchback, or was it kind of just a gamble to see if he would park it on the apex or not?
Yeah, I was hoping. Well, yeah, it's a tricky one, because if you defend too hard, then you're going to end up risking your exit as well. So I thought, well, I'll stay left, and if he dives up the inside, I'll try the switchback, and it panned out pretty well. Yeah.
That certainly did indeed. And of course, quickly before I hand over to you again, John, I want to quickly talk about the tyres, Pete, before we move on to race 2, and I'll give John the opportunity to ask some more questions as well. But tyres, it seemed like they were overheating quite a bit throughout that train. Was that the case, or was it just they kept peaking with their performance and then dropping off ever so slightly?
Yeah, they seem to come and go. If you did a push lap, especially in qualifying, you could do one push lap, but if you tried to do another one straight away afterwards, I found that you would just lose the back end quite easily. So I was aware of that in the race as well, just trying to keep it steady without spinning up the rears. On that final lap, I did spin up the rears again, which is why Chris got the run on me, I think, again, into sort of the final sector. And that was because I spun up the rears, and then they were overheated, so then it was a case of just trying not to spin the car, really.
So despite the overheating, despite the problems, the pace was really good in that race for you. Do you think you can get another podium in the next race? It's going to be starting from a bit further back, but certainly seems you have the racecraft to do it.
Yeah, possibly. It all depends on the cars in front, really, and the overtaking manoeuvres. It's so difficult to overtake, like I say. Who knows? Who knows? It should be a good race, though. Everyone's racing cleanly, as always, and it should be a good one, yeah.
Is it more difficult starting in the midfield? Is there anything you need to be careful of?
Yeah, just stay out of the way of trouble, really. Turn 1 here is pretty spicy on the best of days, so hopefully everyone can hold their lines, and we can have a good start. I mean, I've suffered in the previous races up till now with bad starts and a bit of bad luck, possibly a bit of bad driving on my behalf, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Where am I starting from? Do you know?
It's P7.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, definitely move forward. We'll see what we can do.
Sounds good to me.
It'll be exciting to see. Hopefully, Pete, you get another podium, and yeah, good
chuffed,
luck
yeah.
for the second race coming up in a few moments.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Have a good night.
You too, Pete. Hopefully, for of course Pete's sake, John, that he does get that podium. And as he mentioned, starting in that mid-pack here in this second race, especially for those front runners, is just keep it out of the carnage. Keep your nose clean. Even if you do drop a few places, you've got the pace. You'll surely be able to get at least a few of them back.
Yeah, for sure. You've just got to sort of put that good race alongside this one and just say, I did things right the first time. Let's do it again the next race. And so it'll be an interesting sort of turn of sort of just adapting to it effectively. You've qualified well in the first race. You've got a relatively good start. A lot of people getting good starts, to be fair, in the first race, and so you'll just have to adapt the tactics. I think he's approached this with a very level head, so it should mean that there's no surprises into turn 1 and turn 2. But you never know what people are going to do. Confidence in race 2 means that you brake later, especially on lap 1. So could we see a more dramatic lap 1? I think there's a possibility.
Yeah, there certainly is a possibility that we see some drivers be a little bit too opportunistic on the brakes. So it can lead to that first lap collision where we see some drivers be spun around or something happen in that mid-pack. But it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers do now develop. Of course, for Scott Darvill, he's got an opportunity now to be at the very front of the field. So for drivers like him, Ethan Lee, they're now experiencing being at the front for once. So it will converge in different ways, and drivers will have to adapt on the fly. And it's going to just be all about here, John, about how these drivers, as I say, do adapt and what they decide to do, especially with Darvill at the front of the field. Does he push on very early just to try and build a gap to those faster runners behind? Or does he think, I've got the track position, let's save a little bit, and then we push later on and see what we can do?
It is a tricky one. It is a tricky one. I think if you're starting in that reverse grid, you need to create a gap. That's for sure. You don't necessarily have the pace, especially for those starting that were finishing in P7 to P9. So I mean, you just have to see what happens if you start. First of all, you've got to have a good start. Now that is where the problems usually happen. Starting at the front, you have a bit of added pressure, but you've also got drivers like Chris Pauley that are sort of off the back of a disastrous last lap. Everything going wrong. They had it under control. They made a few mistakes. And so you have drivers with more or less confidence. And what can happen with a reverse grid, especially, is the drivers with the higher confidence steam into turn 1. And the drivers in front of them aren't of that same confidence, and they brake 5 meters earlier, and then you have just a accordion compression of just disaster into the first braking zone. So I think definitely for people, it'll just be a case of just keeping that safety gap that they had that we saw in lap 1, and just trying to eke things out cleanly, because damage around here, downforce around here is so important.
Yeah, it certainly will be indeed. We'll be heading over to the starting grid in a few moments' time. And we are talking about those poor race starts. We've seen it a lot from the man on second place, especially these past 2 weeks, with Jack Goring in that first race and Craig Ledoux last time out in Spa as well. So it seems that second place spot has a little bit of a curse, and that may lead to, say, if Ethan Lee now is the one with the poor start, that may now give Scott Darvill or the opportunity, like we saw with Will Fulks, to just eke out that gap before we even get to turn 1. And that's what happened to Will Fulks, and he was able to break away. As you can see, there's Fulks very far back in the pack from what he's used to. So as he's got to make his way through all these cars, someone like Scott Darvill, as you mentioned, will push early on, could build a big enough buffer that when the tyres do fade, will eventually hold on to that, because he will not get close enough, will the guys behind. But we are racing now here in race 2, and it is another poor start from second place. This time it's Ethan Lee, and Scott Darvill will get to turn 1 very much unscathed. It's going to be Chris Pauley going to hold it around the outside of his course. He started in 5th place. Could he make his way up into 3rd? Ethan Lee runs wide, and so does Pauley. Will Fulks is in a collision in all of this, and he has turned Chris Pauley around. Pauley round in the middle of the field, and it is all congested a little bit further back. Darvill, though, leads the way from Ben Cullen, Ethan Lee, Boland, Forrest, then it's Goring and Will Fulks only up into 7th place so far. But for Chris Pauley, a disastrous start, like a disastrous finish to his race. When it rains, it does pour, and that's Boland having a huge slide through turn 6. That's allowed Will Fulks to move up into 5th place, Goring to 4th, and now Boland will drop throughout the pack. He's now side by side with Jack Trumwit. Just in the background here, there's also Plasteau and Craig Ledoux also squabbling along as well. But we've still got the two at the very front of the field. It's Goring and Fulks. Goring to the inside there. There's contact with Ethan Lee, who's dropping further and further back. More contact with Will Fulks. And today, and in this race actually here, John, it's very dusty indeed. And Lee throws it back down the inside of Fulks and is able to keep the position. As that's someone round in the background. I think that's Forrest who's been spun. It is by Jack Drumwit, who's come into another collision at turn 11 on the opening lap. But a very dusty circuit indeed in this opening tour.
Yeah, so many drivers getting into trouble. Ethan Lee basically getting bullied out of P2 on the initial lap, and that's a drive around again. It's Scott Eastwood. Scott Eastwood, the leader of the amateur category, has gone round into the barrier damage on the front there. Really, really tricky start. Had benefited really from Glenn Bray's demise there on turn 3, but has been demoted now to the back of the grid, and that's another driver. That is Craig Ledoux. It's Craig Ledoux that has spin off as well. So the two leaders of the amateur category find themselves in penultimate and last positions, and I'm being told that he has the meatball flag as well for lots of damage on the car. It's been a chaotic opening, and Scott Darville has got a little bit of a lead, but not enough to the likes of Jack Goring. Chris Boland getting a bit of a tap there as well from Ethan Lee. Ethan Lee has decided he is taking no punts from anybody now. He's defending his line, and very, very tricky there. One person that benefited was Mark Gladwell, the only person of the amateur category to really gain positions from that chaos on lap 1. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can keep those lines, as everybody's missing their braking zones. As you said, very dusty, very tricky. The grip just not there at the moment, and it won't be if drivers keep dragging dust back onto the track.
No, it certainly won't be indeed. It is Chris Pauley now to the inside of Ben West, and he's also going to potentially look to the inside here of Tom Stevens as he tries to recover over that opening lap spin. Got tipped round by Will Fulks as 3 into 1 did not go. And unfortunately for Pauley, he was the one who came out worse. And it's a disaster at the end of race 1, a disaster at the start of race 2. Darville's been able to break a second from Ben Cullen. Then it's Jack Goring and Will Fulks just behind in this, what will be a big battle when it comes to championship implications. Of course, Goring has been very consistent all season. Fulks has not lost a single session, a quali or a race that he has participated in. He has been on that top spot every single time. The closest we got was Thruxton a fortnight ago when Jack Goring nearly was able to hold on against Will Fulks, but the number 31 was able just to muscle the 108 out of the way. But I'm expecting a titanic scrap between these two as they try to get their way past Darville and Cullen. And for Jack Goring, if he can get a car between himself and Will Fulks now, he will be loving life, and he'll be able to build up quite a healthy buffer as he's looking to the inside now into turn 6. It's opportunistic and forces Cullen out the way, a push to pass, and Will Fulks might now try look up the inside into turn 8. There's some slight rubbing between the pair. Fulks late on the brakes. He gets the move done, but Cullen will try go for the up and under as Fulks does run wide. As we look back now from Jack Goring, it is going to be Cullen looking to the inside now into turn 9. Is he going to throw it to the inside line? No, he's not. Just isn't brave enough. And once again, it is Will Fulks behind Jack Goring, but they've only got one car left to navigate, and that's Scott Darville. But you can see the damage and on the front of Will Fulks' car, the front end just somewhat beaten in a little.
I don't think any car doesn't have damage at the moment. Ben Cullen just being forced out of that top 2 at the moment. I think just the pressure showing on Jack Goring a little bit. He was just a little bit impatient and wanting to get past, and Will Fulks is just all over the rear of him, so he just had to get that move done. Otherwise, Will Fulks probably would have sent one round the outside. And you can see how late Will Fulks is broken. Actually, that was a little bit of a mistake, just trying to see how late he could brake, and now he's under pressure from Ben Cullen. I don't think Ben will attempt the overtake. It's just effectively a battle he possibly can't win there, but he can just put him under pressure. And if you go defensive sometimes as the driver in front, you can make a mistake in the line. But you can see Ben just showing the nose, just saying, if you go wide, I am here to profit from your position. And I tell you what, around this course, Will Fulks is the only person using the track limits to their maximum, and that's where he's gaining the lap time at the moment. But, as you said previously, Jack Goring was ahead at Thruxton, was able to mount a defence for the majority of the race. Could it be another time? As Will Fulks, I tell you what, is looking a little bit unsteady in P3 at the moment. That pace is there, but it could also unravel very, very quickly. Meanwhile, in the midfield, Pete Plasto making up positions as well. Chris Boland, they're locked in a battle once again, and they've got quite a few cars ahead. And look at this, Jack Goring to the inside, trying to put pressure on Scott Darville. The pressure not caving in. At the moment, they have have made contact. He just tried to close the door from the outside, and that means Will Fulks gets through. The one thing he couldn't afford to do, he's done it.
Yeah, that is Will Fulks through, and look at Darville taking a wide swinging line to help out his teammate, and that's going to now box Jack Goring in. Is Darville just going to let Will Fulks through? Yes, he is, and there's more contact between Goring and Scott Darville. It was just turning in that little bit too early, has allowed Will Fulks through, a mistake from the championship leader who has been uber consistent all season long, and this time was not able to put up that defense that he needed against a man who has dominated every race and every session he's been a part of. And Ben Cullen now trying to get involved on the action too to move himself back up onto the podium. And is this going to be the opportunity heading into that first corner now for Jack Goring, who needs to get past Scott Darville with immediate effect and then hunt down Will Fulks just in front? The sea somewhat parted for Will Fulks as Goring looks to the outside. Will he try and sling this one all the way to the left? No, he won't. He will run off the road and will try get the exit out of turn 3 as we make our way through 4. It's going to be potentially the same lunge we saw him do onto Ben Cullen. Further back, Ethan Lee has been overtaken by Plasto and Boland, and is Goring going to go for that lunge into turn 6, which he did as we were on board of this man. Ben Cullen only a few laps ago. He looks to the inside line this time around. Isn't going to be enough though, and the more these two squabble, Will Fulks will just pull away, and he has built a 1.3 second lead already over the course of the previous lap.
Problem that Jack is facing right now is in trying to get the overtake done on every single corner of the lap. He's just not creating the opportunity, the big opportunity. You need to start trying to do the switchback. All of these little attempts are just costing both of them time. You're not able to get the nose up the inside. Again, it's very late. Again, the door slammed shut. Scott Darville forced wide as well onto the grass. And he's going to go up the inside. This is personal, this battle. They're both around. Both of them taking too many risks. Scott Darville just managing to get back on the grass before being clobbered by about 6 cars there. Jack Goring all the way down to P9 as well. It's a disaster for both of them, and an avoidable one in my sense of view and point of view here, because they were just being too aggressive, and Jack Goring was trying to go for an overtake that just wasn't happening. And look at him forcing cars out. I mean, I wouldn't say he's lost his head, but I think he's just not thinking this race in terms of championship.
No, I think he's just got a bit hot-headed here. I think he just hasn't looked at the picture. He's more focused on Will Fulks and just keeping him behind and then trying to get ahead. Then Chris Boland going all the way off the road, caught out under braking there behind Pete Plasto and Adam Barron, as they're now side by side as they make their way through turn 4. So Plasto and Barron now run side by side, heading down the hill into turn 5. Who will come out on top in this one? It's Plasto around the outside through 5, which could be the dustier line. Well, it'll be the dustier line then for Barron as he looks to the inside into 6. And I think that's why we're seeing so much contact, is the car's just sliding over that dust. And for Plasto, now through into 8, he's been able to get past onto Barron, and Boland now looking to the inside of Barron, using the opportunity well, an opportunistic lunge to the inside into turn 8. It will be Barron who gets the slight slipstream off Plasto, but a better exit for Boland does get him in front, but Barron will now once again look to the inside into turn 9. Slight contact, and that's Boland sent into a spin, and unfortunately there for Chris Boland, I think he just turned in a little bit too eagerly, and that meant that, of course, Adam Barron went straight into the back of him, as Goring's already recovered to 6th place as he just passed Jack Tromwitt.
Yeah, the pace is definitely there. The car's looking in a little bit worse condition right now. But, yeah, terrible disappointment there for Chris Boland's running a good race. But, yeah, I agree. Just turned in a little bit too early, and Adam was on the inside, was entitled to the line. And because it's mid-engined, as soon as you get a tap on the rear, you just go spinning all the way round. Pete Plasto really under pressure here, however. You know, there's a big gap ahead, and I just want to say Will Fulks has carved a 5.5 second lead already. So Jack will be just cursing himself, I think, a little bit, just to think that he could have been in P2 possibly already. And now we see him going for the move. This is for P5 on Adam Barron, but there's no way around right now. He's trying to set up the switchbacks. This is what he needed to do earlier. Take a different line, figure out where your driver ahead is weaker, and just be patient and go for the moves. The problem is, 9 minutes remaining, you haven't got that many opportunities to get these overtakes done. He's wasted half of the race time with the battling, and now it's dire pressure. So could we see more mistakes right now? It's looking like he's got the pace, but can he keep the level-headedness to make these moves? It doesn't help that the two in front are battling as well, as both of them have a quite bad exit. Ethan Lee just running wide, and that forced Adam Barron wide as well, just following him. And there you go, Jack going to the inside, last and late breakers, and it is Adam that wins that one out. Jack not fancying the move down the inside, and he's still stuck there in P6, but he does have the pace.
Certainly does have the pace indeed. As oh, further back, that's an instant with Scott Darville, and I think he's just put Dan Cross into the wall. Some contact there, and that's a retirement for Dan Cross. As you know, I think he's been towed back to the pit lane, but still, Dan Cross now at the back of the field. This is what happened. He just got tagged by Darville. That was just natural understeer there for Darville, which sent him across the road. And unfortunately, Dan Cross coming across as well, unfortunately, did not help his case, and it tipped Dan into the wall. Goring now all over the back of Adam Barron. He gets the switch back out of the final corner, and now is he going to get the slipstream up into that first corner? I think what Goring, his real big underlying issue is the fact he, as you mentioned, he tries a lunge into every corner because he just wants to get by so desperately. He's too desperate for the moves as he looks to the outside now of Barron through turns 1, 2 and 3, and Barron might even try and move himself onto Ethan Lee, and that's going to help his defense against Jack Goring as they now run down the hill into turn 5 now. Who will come out on top as we make our way through 6? Will we see a Jack Goring lunge once more into this next left-hander, or will he just sit behind as we head to James King as he punts Ben Weston off the road at the first corner? And unfortunately there for Ben, sliding straight across the road, overtaken now by Tom Stephens, and he now falls into the clutches of the likes of Colin Scott. And Craig Ledoux hasn't really made too much progress since that opening lap incident.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether there's some damage has been overtaken by Scott Eastwood as well, so that will be points for the championship. Jack Goring around the outside. This is a good opportunity. No, the door is slammed shut once again. Just not enough pace alongside. And I tell you what, Adam Barron is doing a great defense at the moment. Just keeping the car in the middle of the track, just saying, I'm on the inside. You're going to have to go around the outside. And in these Porsche Cup cars, that's really difficult to do on these long, winding corners. If you've got a very harsh braking zone, which you've only got 2 or 3 of on this track, you can really try and have one up the inside, but it's not that easy. And the problem is now he's probably overheated his tires with the battling and the mishaps. Here we get the switch back, but again, Adam has that covered, and that is great traction, and he's benefiting from the slipstream. The problem is Ethan Lee's giving the slipstream ahead. That's natural part of racing, but it does mean that you're in sort of a slipstream train, and you can see that Adam Barron, actually with less damage on the front, has better straight line speed. So this is making Jack's conundrum, all the way up the inside. Huge spotting of an opportunity there, just forcing the car wide a little bit on exit, and that was just the door left open by Adam there, and Jack said, thank you ever so much. I'm entitled to that position, I'm going for it.
Very eager, very opportunistic, and quick on his feet there was Jack Goring, as that's Craig Ledoux going around the outside of Ben Weston, as he now moves up to 5th place in class. A disappointing evening here for Ledoux in this second race, as that's a spin for Colin Scott just behind, who's now got Chris Pooley all over the back of him when Pooley does catch up near at the end of this race. But for Will Fulks, once again, he's 7 seconds clear of Ben Cullen, the race leader. Once again has... Oh, that's actually Craig Ledoux round at turn 5. He might have been tagged there potentially by Ben Weston, or could have been... Actually, no, he just went by himself through turn 5. So I believe the damage he might have sustained on that opening lap has really affected either the tyres or just the overall balance of that machine, because that is a very, very unusual place to lose the car, as Jack Goring is now all over the back of Ethan Lee, who will defend for his life for that P4. I say that, it's Goring to the inside now through the final corner. Lee will try and hold on to this one. He has been beaten around today, the man now trying to hold on to his 4th place, but he might just be done in here by Jack Goring, who's got the better straight line speed, or has he? Because Goring is going to have to hold this one to the inside line. Lee might try the good old switcheroo in this one, and for Goring, is he going to be able to hold on? Lee looks to the inside line now, but just does not have the overspeed he needs to get the move done, as they all run completely off the road through turn 3, and Goring now up into 4th place. I think that's where his charge is going to come to an end, because Pete Plasto is just going to be that little bit too far in front, and he might still end the day off with a second place finish here.
Well, you've got 5 seconds to catch if you're Jack Goring, and you've got 4 minutes to do it. So that's more than a second a minute, which is quite a leap in terms of pace. It is possible, though, seeing as he's the top 2 fastest around the track, at least in qualifying, and I'd probably say in the race. But that visual gap there, really tricky. I tell you what, Ben Cullen has had a good race here. A little bit of argy-bargy at the start that he was victim of, but has managed to recover it well with everybody else battling, and just a clean, consistent race. I will just go back to that damage on Craig Legia's car. One thing you don't want around here is understeer from front damage. What would be more detrimental and possibly race ending is rear damage. That diffuser damage and any sort of impact with the rear bumper will make the rear unstable, and that's exactly what you need around this track. You need good rear downforce to keep the car planted, and every single time we've seen a car with rear damage, they've just gone spinning around. So unfortunate for Craig Legia. I think that he's down to last place now in the race, but you know, still scoring points as long as you're in the race, so all good on that front in terms of championship. It's not a disaster, but he would have wished for more. Pete Plasto, can he find any way past? I mean, it's the same case as Jack Goring. You've got the pace over speed, but can you find the gap? Can you find the opening? Ben Cullen doing the defensive line, taking the different line, and arguably the better line there, just straightening the exit here, so you've got good speed, so you don't have to defend here into turn 5 and turn 6. You can take all of the racing line, and that means you can keep that gap, missing the apex a little bit compared to Pete Plasto. So Pete definitely has the racecraft here, but again, the pace isn't bad from Ben, and this could easily be a podium, if not a P2. You can see Plasto there, good on exit here. This will be an opportunity, however, into turn 9. Will it be enough? Not quite sure. Let's have a look. No, not going for it is Pete right now, but there's still possibly another lap and maybe 2 laps to get it done.
Yeah, there is going to be more opportunities for Plasto against Ben Cullen than we've already seen Plasto in a final lap skirmish for a podium position. This time, it's for a second place. Jack Goring is found about a second on these two in front, but at the moment, unless they really start to squabble, it will not be enough for a race position, and he will just have to fall behind. There could be a battle for the AM race lead as well between Glenberry and Mark Gladwell, and I believe with the results that Gladwell is showing actually in this race, he might be able to jump up to at least second place in the championship, and even with Scott Eastwood's poor performance here in this second race and even the first race as well, really put Eastwood under pressure into the remaining 4 rounds of the season. But for Plasto, he's trying everything he can, trying different lines. As we know, he likes to open up the corners. He doesn't open up this one as much. He keeps more of a narrow line through turn 4, but he's really into prime opportunity now. He's in striking position. He's only a 10th and a half behind as we make our way through turn 5. He loses a bit due to the dirty air. Does he go for the lunge? He looks for the lunge into turn 6, and he just isn't able to get the move done. Just lost too much time through 6, and that's now going to cost him all the way through the rest of the lap that he wasn't able to get that lunge done, as Jack Goring is now 3.7 seconds back as Glenberry and Mark Gladwell. That battle rages on in the AM category, and it is going to be Gladwell who just about holds on for now.
For the moment, but he's under considerable pressure there, having to go with the full defensive line in turn 8 even, which won't make it easy into turn 9. So we'll have to wait and see. Pete Plasto still 0.4 of a second back. You can keep an eye on that gap in the top left-hand corner there, as once again, I think it's just Glenberry just putting the pressure on, just showing the nose in the mirror, and that's enough to distract the driver ahead. Although Mark Gladwell will be very keen to take a victory here. It's a good recovery drive, though, from Glenberry. They find themselves right at the back of the pack after the first lap incident, so they've definitely had the pace and have profited from other people's mistakes, as Will Fulks sets another fastest lap of the race, and this will be the final lap of the race, as I think that was very close to the race timer ending on this lap. So yeah, indeed, they will go another lap, but maybe some drivers have miscalculated in terms of fuel and stuff. We'll have to wait and see. But Glenberry just going for the attacking line, not getting the traction though on exit, so heading on to the final lap for them. It's not close enough to mount an attack into turn 3.
No, it certainly is not indeed. And further up, Plasto is still hounding Ben Cullen. As you cut to him here, actually, it's Plasto once again really within that window of opportunity, and this time doesn't go for the move into turn 6, gives him better opportunities into the likes of 8 and 9. Is he going to look for it here? No, Cullen puts his car into the middle of the road, but it's going to compromise his exit and give Plasto the opportunity now. Down into turn 9, only a few more overtaking opportunities left to go here for the number 312. As he looks to the inside now of Cullen, is Plasto going to get this move done? There's slight contact, but they still both remain facing in the right direction as they rub side by side through 10. And now as we head into 11, Cullen will go later on the brakes. Plasto will go for the up and under, get the exit as Ben Cullen really squeezes him to the inside line. Plasto just isn't able to get the move done. And could it be here for Ben Cullen? A second place finish. And look how much Jack Goring has been able to catch up to these two in front. It's going to be a last-ditch effort surely into turn 15 for Plasto. And to round off the evening, once again, Will Fulks reigns supreme. Domination continues. Fulks wins here in Navarra for the second time this evening. The streak continues for the number 31, and for that battle for second place, who's it going to be? It's going to be Ben Cullen, and only just ahead of Pete Plasto. But once again, Will Fulks, he is inevitable. He will be supreme once again over the course of a weekend, and his streak will remain intact. That is another race victory here this evening. I think that makes it 6 in a row overall. As you know, 7 in a row overall. And for Will Fulks, he is unstoppable.
Mark Gladwell takes the victory in amateur category as well, with Glenbury in P2. So that battle did end like that. And Adrian Warmington very close as well, according to that leaderboard. So very, very close in the amateur category, and they've had a good race there. And apart from the opening incidents, we actually had some lovely wheel-to-wheel racing. I will give a shout out to Ben Cullen and Ethan Lee for keeping their head firmly on their shoulders and getting good results after a race that had drivers starting with much better pace behind them. They've managed to claw some significant points from this race. But what can you say about Will Fulks just demonstrating the sort of understanding of the car that he has by drifting it across the line and just doing a demonstration of how in control of that car he is?
Yeah, he certainly is indeed. And yeah, it was just wow. What's another great performance for Will Fulks there. He capitalised on the battle with Goring and Scott Darville getting a little bit too hot-headed, and it did work out in the end. But here are your results in the pro category. It's Will Fulks who wins by 13.1 seconds. Another absolute masterclass here in the sprint race. And it's Ben Cullen who wins by a tenth and just under 0.2 of a second over Pete Plasto for second and third. Then it's Jack Goring fourth, Lee, Barron, Forrest, Darville who recovered to 8th, Boland and Trunwick round out your top 10. The remaining drivers in the pro category was Tom Stevens in 11th, James King 12th, Chris Pooley after that opening lap incident unfortunately finished in 13th, and for Dan Cross it was a 14th place finish, 7 laps down, a retirement from the race. Then in the AM category it was Mark Gladwell who makes it 2 for 2 this evening. He wins once again from Glenbury in second, Adrian Warmington in third, Scott Eastwood fourth, Ben Weston in fifth. The Jew, after that early incident, potentially got some damage in the car, couldn't go to sixth. Couldn't get any higher than sixth. And then Colin Scott rounds out that field in seventh. That was a very, very chaotic second race, you could say, John. It was extremely Chaos Fest. It was extremely a heavyweight bout, I would say. A lot of drivers really throwing in some punches. You would think it was the last race of the season with how they were acting. But yeah, once again, though, the headline stays the same. Will Fulks dominates for a second race in a row here in Spain.
Indeed, it's the second half of the season starting, so I think people have come out of the blocks with a few punches, as they say. So it's one of those races where you go, everybody was on edge after race 1, and you could see that in race 2 on lap 1 it was going to get ugly, and it did for certain drivers. Unfortunately, it's impacted some more than others. So yeah, what can you say? You had to have some pace overlap to really gain positions in that race, and once the field sorted itself out, that's when we saw the confidence sort of come back in again and come into play. And I will say also, probably the track, reducing the dustiness of it with just cars going over it made overtaking a possibility again. So in the opening laps of the race, you had that dustiness, you had lack of grip, and maybe a bit of overconfidence. And yeah, hopefully in the interviews we'll be able to get some perspectives of that.
Yeah, certainly hope we will, and I think the dust did play a big part in that at least the opening few skirmishes, because of course people will try get onto the brakes on the inside, realise, oh, the car's not stopping, and then they'll go straight into the side of somebody, or we'll have to take avoiding action. But talking about interviews, John, we will hear from the lone retirement from that race, and that is going to be Dan Cross, and we can get his takes on race 1 and what was shaping up to be a good race 2 until that incident with Scott Darville. So let's bring him in to the chat. Hello, Dan. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you?
We can hear you loud and clear. Well, first of all, it was an alright race 1, a disappointing race 2. Just talk us through your evening. How did things go?
It was going fantastic. I'll be quite honest. This is probably one of the best rounds I've had so far in this championship. I've been pushing myself too hard, I think, because I've been getting quite upset with my pace and not really understanding how this car drives and how to get the most out of it. So that's been difficult for me. But this tonight has been fantastic until the obvious.
So perhaps talk about that obvious. What exactly happened? We caught a brief glimpse of it on the broadcast, but not enough information to decipher exactly what happened.
From my perspective, it just felt like I felt like I had left Scott plenty of room through that sweeping right-hander. I don't recall what corner number it is right now, but I felt as though I'd left him a good sort of car and a half's width, and it seems that he just understeered into me, maybe kept his foot in it a little bit too much and let the car drift out wide and tag me. Ultimately, it's not up to me to decide who's at fault for it, but I feel a little bit hard done by. He has apologized to me. I want to get that out of the way. He has messaged me privately and apologized. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little bit disheartening, especially with the fact you were going to be on for a good result in that race too. At that stage, you were battling for a potential top 5 finish because of how chaotic those opening few laps were. Talk about the opening few laps. It seemed like the difference between race 1 and race 2, the circuit was a lot more dustier in race 2 at the beginning. Did that have any effect on the car? Did that make grip a little bit harder to find?
I'll be honest, if it did, I don't think I'm at that level where it would have made any difference to me personally. I'm sure people like Will Folks and whoever else is routinely at the front would notice that difference, but I honestly, I don't think I quite meet that skill level to feel that difference.
And perhaps then, just coming back on what you said in a previous answer, in terms of understanding the car then, what's the main difficulty, would you say, about understanding this mid-engine Porsche?
For me, I think I think I'm trying too hard to drive it like GT3 and GT4 cars, knowing full well that it's a completely different machine and it demands a different driving style. I just haven't quite managed to pin down what that difference is. I think I'm slowly getting there. I think that performance towards the end of race 2 was, I could see the delta going green more and more each lap. So I think I was starting to, quite late in the season get the hang of it. But I'm not expecting to suddenly start gaining time hand over fist here.
Yeah, the more track time you get, the better things will go. And the last question from us, Dan, before we let you go and enjoy your evening, just about next week. We head to Donington Park for an endurance round where, of course, we've been to Donington before. I think we're on the GP layout next week. First of all, are you confident around there? And do you prefer the endurance format because you get more time in the car?
I think yes, I enjoy the endurance format. I think it's I think that format allows you to settle down into the rhythm of the race much easier and think about getting a bit patient and not trying to force yourself to gain positions. I feel like the sprint format does sometimes demand a little bit more impatience and aggression from you. but Donington as a whole, yeah, I feel reasonably confident. I'm certainly not going to be fighting for the sharp end, but I'm confident enough. I had a terrible round one at Donington National that absolutely doesn't reflect my actual pace there. But I think I can come back swinging this time if I can keep a lid on my nerves.
Well, hopefully you do, and we'll of course root for you as well once again. And yeah, Dan, of course, sorry about what happened in race 2, but overall a good evening from yourself, and as you say, a good step forward in the car, and good luck next week.
Lovely. Not your fault, but thanks very much.
Well, congratulations, and yeah, enjoy your evening. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. Have a good night.
Right, that was Dan Cross here. John, we'll have one more interview before we head to our driver of the day vote, and that will be Ethan Lee, I think making his first appearance in the commentary box. Hello, Ethan, can you hear us?
Yes, good evening. How's it going?
Very good. Thank you, Ethan. Of course, congratulations on this evening. It was a very strong performance from yourself. You got a little bit bruised in race 2, but just talk us through your evening. Just how did you find the 2 races? How did you find the circuit?
Yes, well, I think the circuit, I think we can say for all of it, it's a nightmare of a circuit, considering it was very hot track, getting up to about, what, I think 37-degree track temperature. So tyres was overheating on almost, not overheating, but like really hot on every corner, and you really had to like make sure you were going at like 95% of your pace, even though my 100% is nowhere near the top runner's 100%. Race 1, I think, went really well for me. There was no instance really. I was kind of in my own little space, racing Scott behind, who got a bit faster near the end, managed to hold him off, but couldn't really battle with those in like, the P8, P7 sort of placement. Race 2, on the other hand, now that's where I got entirely bullied on the first lap. I believe that as soon as I got to about turn 5, 6, 7 and 8, I was seeing Jack just wanting to put it down the inside. Will already did it going into turn 6. I obviously let them go after I knew they were faster than me, and kind of retrospectively then seeing what happened with Scott and Jack going into, I think, that like turn 13, 14 section. But I think the P5, for me at least, was a really good sort of result for me. It's good points coming home for myself, and yeah, I think the pace was there. I was keeping up with quite a lot of people, but yeah, I think going into the next race, I've got a bit more confidence in the car, I think.
In terms of that battling, and I do agree, it's a great result. Was it because of extra pressure of drivers behind being a bit faster, and how did you perceive that? How did you manage to keep a level head, even though there was a little bit of argy-bargy?
Yeah, I think whenever when you already know you're a slower driver with people who are much faster behind, you kind of have to take into account that they're probably not going to want to wait for you. So I kind of took the passive sort of role of, I know you're faster than me, you'll get past me at some point. I did try and battle them into corners, so you might have seen probably going into like turn 8, I tried to not give Jack the inside as much as he could have done. Obviously that compromises me coming on to that sort of straight. But I think it's just, yeah, they're faster, you may as well try and give them a little bit of argy-bargy, but at the end of the day, at some point you might get caught, you might get span, and if you get span, that's your race over in a sense, so you kind of got to preserve your own race, so you kind of know in yourself where you are racing. I know I wasn't racing Will or Jack, or even those in P3 and P4, but I knew I could kind of battle with a few others around me, and that's kind of where you kind of find your placement in the race, I think. And that's kind of how I went and moved forward with the race to make sure I kept a level head. Didn't go too hard. I didn't push myself. I knew that quite a lot of these corners, as you get higher track temperature, you just have a much harder time of actually taking the corners fast. So I kind of just had to dial it back a little bit and just try and take it at my own pace.
Yeah, it certainly was a very interesting race, and one which I think even though you got beaten around a little bit, was certainly one that you managed quite nicely. Of course, it was very dusty at the start of the race. We did ask Dan just beforehand, but he didn't notice any of the issues with lack of grip. But did you find any lack of grip offline with the dust being kicked up in race 2, or was it very similar grip to race 1?
I think you can definitely feel the dust in some regard. I think when I was going into going into turn 2 and turn 3, and I think I kind of went inside, outside, and you kind of felt that differential in grip. I think at that point though, I was battling a few people, so maybe I wasn't feeling it as much as what other people might have done. But you can definitely feel it when you're going around those first few laps. You kind of want to stay in on the racing line and then start battling. But I felt it a little bit, definitely. But I think what Dan said as well, we probably don't have that sort of skill level just yet to be able to feel every single little bit of grip. I felt it a little bit, but probably not as much as what other people might have been able to do. But yeah, definitely a considering factor for, like, lap 1 sort of off the line. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good race, to be honest, overall.
And just a final quick question from me: can you use that sort of consistent pace and now the good results to move forwards and try and get better results, maybe even a podium?
I think that is always the aim. I think a podium is always the aim. You don't want to be like the Nico Hülkenberg, where you don't get any podiums, but you're just still up there. I think getting a podium would be the definite aim. I think looking at the tracks, I've not really raced them all that much because I've mainly been doing like F1, but I'm thinking getting more into GT3s and more into Porsche Cup. But yeah, maybe Donington. I quite like the Donington track itself, but it's definitely one of those where I kind of need to start doing the practice to get that level of consistency, which is kind of what I did with this track. So practice makes perfect. So I think going through P3 would be a definite aim for the next few races going forward. If not, just maximise as much of the actual results I can get. And I think P5 is a good start.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. And talking about moving on to the rest of the season, one last one from me as well. So we'll let you go enjoy your evening after this one, Ethan. It's more of a two-part question, but we head to, of course, Donington next time out for another one of the endurance rounds. I think this is on the GP layout instead of the national layout. First of all, are you confident at Donington? And then second of all, do you prefer the endurance races compared to the sprints, or do you prefer the sprints to the endurance?
So I think for the Donington, I do really actually quite like the track. I think I actually started to practice the GP circuit because I forgot we were doing the national circuit for the first round, so I got a bit more confident around the GP circuit. I got a bit of confidence going into the national circuit on the first round. I got an okay result, bar that spin I had. But Donington's, I think it's going to be a good track. I think I'll probably will try and do well in it. Going on to the endurance sort of rounds, I do quite like the endurance. You know, it's going to be one of those where you got to think about not overdoing your tyres if you're trying to double stint them. Kind of have to do a bit of fuel management if you know that your fuel is marginal from having a lap. Because obviously, if you go in a lap later, you're obviously taking like 5 litres of fuel less or something like that. So you're kind of then getting a little bit ahead in the pit stops as well. And then there's always that sort of fatigue factor, even though, is it 40 minutes, 45 minutes? Isn't really that long in grand scheme of things. I've done 24-hour races where you're doing like 2-hour stints or an hour and a half stints, but it's definitely still taxing, and especially if you're racing people. I think if you're racing people on an endurance round, that's the difficult part. If you're on your own, it's usually okay because you're not battling, you're not trying to go faster. But if I was battling people, it would be difficulty. But I do really enjoy this sort of endurance race lineup. I'm just glad it wasn't endurance for this track, because if it was that hot, that would have been a nightmare.
I certainly did seem so, but congratulations on your P5 in race 2, Ethan. And yeah, we'll let you go. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we see you again next week. And you never know, next week could be that podium with that little bit of extra experience you got on the GP layout.
Yep, you never know. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good evening.
You too. Well, John, that was Ethan Lee, who gave us great insight, actually, into the evening as a whole. But after that, we'll quickly move on to the driver of the day vote. John, I'm going to start with you. Who is your driver of the day?
Okay, so we'll disregard the obvious choice, which is always Will Fulks. The pace is absolutely incredible. I have to go, I think, with either Ben Cullen or Ethan Lee, just purely for race 2. That defending and being able to keep position, keep a level head with the chaos happening around them. And I think I have to give it for Ben Cullen just because of that podium and just battling against the odds effectively.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. Yeah, of course, a big shout out as well to Pete Plasto. He's certainly an honourable mention for the driver of the day vote too. Two very strong podiums here this evening. But yeah, I agree. Ben Cullen, a very strong contender. He set himself up nicely with race 1 on that reverse grid, and he was able to then capitalise on that and really make it work to good effect. So yeah, I think for Ben, it certainly was. It would be a deserved driver of the day. So that's going to be your driver of the day, ladies and gentlemen. It will be Ben Cullen. But, John, I think that is going to be all. We head to Donington next week for an endurance. So is there any last words from you before we take our bow?
I think my word of the day is Binala. Because of the amount of rotations that we saw during the 2 races. They'll be hoping that doesn't happen in Donington, but then again, we know that's a tricky track as well. They've done sort of a race around there, the national layout, as we've mentioned now. So that tricky hairpin in the last sector now on the international layout, very, very tricky. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but all I know is that the storyline will continue from this race, and the rivalries that are starting to appear will be even more entertaining then.
Oh, they certainly will be indeed. So join us next week for the next endurance round, and what will be as well the final endurance round, I believe. Yes, the final endurance round of the season, round 7. The second half of the season has certainly begun, and you never know, we might see some more weather on the horizons. And to go with John's Spinala take, maybe something more like this evening, and like we saw in Spa as well, there was plenty of spins there in the wet weather. But we shall see you next week at 8 PM UK time, on 9 PM European time, for a trip back to Donington Park. We'll be doing the GP layout that time around, a longer race format too. So stay safe, stay well, and we shall see you next time out. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Go!